now. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the very first call on the topic of the village in the city. And my name's Mark McKergow, and I'm absolutely thrilled that so many of you have chosen to come and join in with this call to find out a bit more about this concept, which I hope is an exciting and timely and workable one. And I'm very pleased to be joined today by Wendy and by Adrian, who are going to, we've had a chat and they've got some things to share as well. We've got various things to do together. I hope we'll get enough time so you can all meet each other in some smaller groups and talk about the ideas. And we'll think about what might happen next towards the end of the call. I'm sure everyone's Zoom veterans here. If you've got questions or comments, typing them in the chat is a good thing, and I'll keep an eye on that. And there'll be various other ways of engaging as we go along. So if you've got questions or thoughts, please do join us. Do type them in the chat. So let's begin. What's all this about then? Well, village in the city it's not a new idea at all. Let me first of all say that. But I hope I'm bringing something new to it. My name is Mark McKergow. I am a management leadership consultant by trade, if you like, and I've written various books on organisational change and leadership and leading as a host. And in the course of the research about what makes a good host, I started to realise that it's more than simply organisational leadership that involves hosting. It's anything that involves bringing people together and creating community in that regard. And I think that villages need hosts. And I'll come into this a bit later. But so that's what I'm bringing to the table is, if you like, some knowledge and expertise about hosts and how hosting works and how the art of bringing people together works. I was on a call a few weeks ago, just about 3 weeks ago. We were thinking about building back better and what we want to see different. And I was struck very much in my own experience in the pandemic of suddenly meeting the neighbours. In our part of fairly central Edinburgh, the West End, where I'm from, we've lived here for about 3 years, and we knew a couple of other people in the street. But somebody, my good wife Jenny particularly, who's just joined us, suggested that she got in touch with the people we did know and said, let's set up a street email. And other people joined in, and we set up a WhatsApp, and we've been talking to each other, and we've been doing shopping for each other, and we've been clapping for the NHS together, and I've been playing my saxophone on the front step on a Sunday evening while we were all locked down to general applause, I think. And I was thinking how marvellous it is that we now know each other as a street in a way that we just didn't before. And I get the feeling that my experience is kind of mirrored in various ways around the world at this time. And so I was thinking, well, we don't want to lose that connection. On the contrary, we want to build on it. So what's the next level up from a street? And in my view, the next level up from the street is the village. And that's true whether you're in a city or a town or indeed in a village. We're all in villages in the city, potentially. And some of these villages in the city are pretty well developed, and others are really lying dormant and nascent and ready to be woken up. And I think that my village, the West End, is rather in that category. So I think another point, the second point I want to make, is that we have all in the pandemic, we're all Zoom veterans now, I think, and we've all experienced talking to people all over the world on this amazing technology. We have people joining us today from Indonesia, and Australia, and Uruguay. So that's 4 continents at least, if not more, on this call. And isn't that amazing and fantastic? When I was a kid, my parents were kind of leading lights in our village in Suffolk, in England, in the east of England. And I rather thought they were a bit useless because they only talked to people in the village. And they talked to people in the village because that's who there was to talk to. There were telephones, but they were expensive and only to be used in emergencies, at least in our house. And what we've seen is a kind of movement across the spectrum from only being able to talk to the people who live near you through telephones, internet, email, chat, Zoom, and all of a sudden we can talk to like half the population of the world if we know their address and we want to get hold of them. So we've seen this immense spread in the number of people we could talk to. And I am thinking that this makes talking to the people who live next to you really important again, for a different reason. And it's a kind of counterbalancing reason. We can talk to all these people everywhere in the world, but we need to have some conversations that are cross-generational, cross-demographic, with people who aren't quite like us. And the risk of all these people here is that they're a bit like us. So I think that talking to people in our villages, the ones who live within a 5 or 10 minute walk of us, is going to be an incredibly important step in rebalancing our lives and our connections, and ourselves and our connections. So that's the sort of second reason why I think this idea is a moment who's come. Of course, the idea of localism is not new. In fact, there's lots and lots of people out there espousing localism. There are global organisations that will tell you about the importance of localism. And what I'm trying to do with the village in the city idea is do what I often do in my work, which is to try and connect the very big and the tiny. So the idea of the village community is potentially a very big one, but what are tiny things we can do in order to use that and build on it? And so I wrote, sitting down with a blank sheet of paper, what I call the Village in the City Manifesto. And that lays down some of the things I've just said about why I think it's important, and it also lays down seven aspects, I think, elements of a working village, whether that's in the city or anywhere else. And as far as I know, that's new. So I'm just going to share a slide with you now of this 7 aspects of the village in the city. And hopefully you can all see that now. 7 basic components of a village in the city. And this is my work, and I'm laying it in front of you for the first time today. A village has a name. That sounds obvious, but it's not always the case. There's sort of, you need a good name. Most places have them, not everywhere does. The second thing you need is much more difficult. It's inclusivity. Everyone who lives there is a member, if you like. So it's not just about the people who've lived there for a long time. It's not just about the people who live the right side of the tracks or whatever like that, or in the nice houses around the green. It's everyone who's there is a member. And we're discovering with the Black Lives Matter movement that it's not simply enough to be open to people joining you. You have to be active, you have to reach out, you have to invite. So inclusivity is key. But a village has meeting places, and those meeting places should be accessible to all and within walking distance. This is becoming a key aspect of my thinking. So where are your meeting places? Are they inside? Are they outside? They should be both. Are they the kind of places where people can have chance interactions as well as come for organised events? There has to be connection within the village. And these days that might be a Facebook group, or it might be an email newsletter, or it might be an old-fashioned parish magazine, or it can be all sorts of things. But there needs to be some way that the people in the village can communicate with each other, as well as meeting each other face-to-face. So you can share the news, welcome new people, and get things moving between us. The fifth thing, connecting with my own work, is the idea of hosts. You need people to involve and engage the wider community. And in the old days, in the English village setting where I grew up, that used to be the vicar and the pub landlord, and between them they probably knew most, if not everybody, who was in the village. That's not, I think, the case anymore, unfortunately. Church going has dropped, with apologies to Reverend Nick. The pub is probably now more like a restaurant or something, often than a community centre. But we need, I think, village builders. And I'm hoping to maybe start a movement, if there's an appetite, for village builders to go and be the people who are making this happen. The sixth thing is inclusive gatherings, things that bring the community together. And they could be all sorts of things. They could be, Kaylee's here in Scotland. They could be a summer party outside. They could be a Christmas thing. They could be a music weekend. They could be all sorts of things. Things that bring people together. And finally, an identity. What makes this a special place? What makes this a special place? And that, you'd think that would be near the top of the list, but I think it's something that emerges, actually. It emerges out of the conversations that happen. And if we're going to start building villages, and I'm already making a start here in the West End by connecting up with others, two questions for you. What's already there? And in the West End, for example, here we have an excellent name and an excellent identity, but not much connection. I discovered there is a Facebook group for West End residents, and it had 20 members as of last week. We have now an active plan to grow that, for example. We don't have any inclusive gatherings yet. We're a bit short of meeting places, but there are thoughts out there. So what's already there, and then think about next steps. This is the way of building on what's there. You don't have to reinvent it all, but you have to start by building on what's there and gathering other people around who want to be involved, and then making step-by-step progress. So the Village in the City Manifesto sets out in a bit more detail, but under those 7 headings, the things that I think are important in the village in the city. So I'm going to stop the slide share there, and I'm just going to drop a link into the chat to the manifesto if you would like to read it either now or later. That's there for anyone who wants it. So I've sort of set the scene. I invited Wendy and Adrian, who I know through various routes, who are also both interested in this area from a professional basis. And I just invite them, first of all, Wendy, to share a few responses to what I've just said, and your thoughts on what's important about village in the city concept and how might it happen. You're on mute. You.
Yes, thanks, Mark, and it's lovely to be engaged with everybody. So I guess I've had an interest in these things for a long time, about 30 years. I've been very interested in human creativity and well-being. So the connection between Mark and I is about 12 years ago. I decided, I was very involved at the time in flying around the world. I'm engaged with some very interesting leaders and spiritual leaders, and all around the narrative of wisdom. And I got very exasperated of everybody talking about wisdom and not bringing it down to earth. So I come from a small fishing village in Cornwall, and I had moved to Cheltenham. And I literally thought, how could I kind of create a sense of village within my local town? So I actually went about creating the first of 2 community initiatives that are both of which are still going. And it was just a very interesting exercise from the beginning of trying to engage everybody. So I thought I'd share with everybody a little bit about my story with that and some of the things that we learned from it. But one of the things that's been the most evident is the degree of resilience that the 2 initiatives that I created all that time ago gave to the current situation with COVID, because they were both so established that we were able to very quickly, or I don't run them anymore, but those that run them were so quickly able to engage people and provide resources and connect people up. So it was a rather lovely thing to see that these things that were established that time ago were able to help in the way they could. So there were 2 different initiatives. I established something called Cheltenham Connect, which pretty much ticked off everything that Mark talked about. We started very simply. I did a leaflet drop around town, And it was really just to say, is anyone interested in starting up a community initiative? So the first thing is, there's always extraordinarily wealth within the community that you're not really aware of. So I assumed 3 or 4 people would turn up to this meeting, and I booked a table in a local pub, and 18 people turned up, and assumed that I had an agenda and had thought it all through, which I hadn't. So we all went up to the upstairs room, and that really started Cheltenham Connect. But it was really very much what Mark was saying, starting with where you're at, not being reliant on funds. So one of the first things I learned was just how much you can do without funds, and that you don't need to wait for a community grant to do it. We learned very quickly that although there were activists already engaged in the community, there was a huge resource already there of people who you weren't the ones that you would necessarily have thought would step up to do this. So another learning was these were not the retired people. Most of the core group that I worked with at the beginning all were actively working in their various professions, but they felt absolutely passionate about their community. So it was people who very much were giving on top of their existing, 9-to-5 day job. We kicked off with what was already there and what the needs. So it's very much place-based. So what are the needs of the individual community? So we established 4 groups: buy local, which is common to everybody, go green, skill space, and community at the beginning. And the reason we did that was because we knew that within our community, different people had different interests. So we were trying to engage the most number of people at the most time. We also did exactly what Mark was saying. We said the Cheltenham has 120,000 population, and that was too big to be a village. So we very quickly said South Cheltenham had its unique history and identity that was already identified within the town. It was evident to everybody. So Cheltenham Connect was actually the South Cheltenham element that was built up. We then did a huge number of activities. So everything from history projects to fantastic music festivals, craft fairs. We did buy local campaigns. We did green campaigns. It was quite extraordinary, the amount of enthusiasm there was once we honed in on aspects that people were particularly interested in. And that was the key of it, really. So we still have probably the biggest local community business to business initiative going on. There's a monthly get together. There's an annual really big event that's run for local businesses. And we also we initiated something called Laptop Friday, which was for freelancers, because one of the things we discovered through the dialogues was, and it's going to be even more so now, was that lots of freelancers were working at home and were very isolated. So Laptop Friday became where you went on a Friday morning. You could still work, always in cafes. So all our meetings were either pubs or cafes because of the inclusivity. And that now, I think now there's a Laptop Friday in Cardiff and other places. So that's kind of morphed a bit. So we learned a lot. One of the things I learned at the very beginning, which might be easier now because actually COVID has connected people up, was I naively thought that all the local traders would be delighted with us moving in to assist. And actually it took me more than a year to persuade the local traders that I wasn't a council spy or a political spy, because no one believed that people with these skill sets would give their time for nothing. It was very, very interesting, the degree of suspicion. But once we turned it, a bit like Jamie Oliver, when you get your worst critic becomes your greatest champion. Once they realized that this was really genuine and this was local people of all skill sets wanting to help, there was a huge amount of goodwill and resources. Rather not needing funding, one of the great benefits of not having money was when we wanted to run events, we had to beg, borrow, and not steal. But we then had very strong relationship with the churches to borrow their tables and with the university to borrow their exhibition boards. And because of that, that relationship was a really different one to saying, look, you know, please, can I rent these for a while? It just changed the dynamic. So that was one of the most interesting things we learned. So it's been going a long time now. I actually think now there's more need for this and there's more possibility of doing it now, because at the time we didn't have the digital tools, and there are now very interesting digital tools such as Nextdoor, which could be so quickly brought into any new initiative. But the other one that I was going to say was about the other initiative. The other one I set up, which is very popular and we can't get anyone to leave it now, is we set up something for anyone that was new to the town to be immediately networked in to a social group. And that social group had a presence. There are a number of all sorts of different things that were spinning off it. It started really small, so we could take everybody out and book a restaurant and have a jazz session or whatever. But now there are 180, I think, members. So obviously you get the smaller groups, and that has challenges of its own. But then those groups create their own identity. But that's been hugely successful, and I'm continually stopped by people in restaurants and around the town to say that that's really changed their life, because we're a very social town. If you come in and you don't know anybody, you're really aware of that and you feel very outside of it. So it's a very, very quick way that all you do, whoever is hosting it, they get hold of you, and all we did was had a cup of coffee. So the first step is sign up, meet the organizer for a cup of coffee, and that's it, you're in. Whether or not you engage with things is up to you, but it's worked extremely well. So yeah, I'm passionate about that. My work at the moment is actually, I'm developing something called the Flourish Project, which is looking at the triple aspect of well-being, which is self, others, and the natural world. So I'm very, very interested in this element of the crucial element of relationship. So it's an ecology of well-being, and what we are seeing now is local communities are absolutely essential to that. And the other element that I think I'm very interested in building up is schools now have a much more embedded relationship into communities, and I really hope we find ways of maintaining that, because that's quite unique. Schools love it, but there is going to need to be some support to maintain those kind of points of conversation. So yeah, that's a quick explanation of why Mark and I kicked off on this.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much. And this is one of the nice thing is that I haven't seen Wendy for 10 years since we left Cheltenham, and it's got us back talking again, which is absolutely super. So thanks so much, Wendy. That's lovely. Let's move to Adrian, who is in Berlin. And Adrian did a course that I run online a year or two ago, and he is somewhat of an expert in urban development, and he has some interesting perspectives from his own position and also from his experience of living in Germany. Adrian.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to see so many interested faces coming together for this little online village, that you might be able to call it. As Mark said, I mean, primarily it's creating or improving a village as a physical area is something that I've been interested for a long time and worked in for a long time. I studied urban planning. I worked as an urban planner in Australia primarily, although I'm in Berlin now. And then I moved into urban planning and community development in the developing world, developing context. So Africa and Southeast Asia, Latin America. I've been doing that for the last 16, 17 years. Based in Berlin, I've also been working at the neighborhood level in Berlin. What I found interesting at the beginning was of the conversation, and I can agree with nearly everything, or probably everything and more, that's been said already as the key attributes to how to get people together and get something moving at the village level or neighborhood level, street level. There's across the world there seems to be some pretty normal elements, or I would say basic elements that function. And every culture is different, every continent's different, even village is different. There's some things that work better than others, and it depends on the people and depends on the personality of that area as well. But I found it really interesting when I first started as an urban planner. I worked with telecommunications companies putting up their networks, so their infrastructure, and what you could say these mobile phone towers that most people are not so happy to have. And I was amazed at how quickly people would galvanize about something that they didn't want, to the extent where you would have newspaper articles written about you and what you're doing, cans of Coke thrown at you, all sorts of, dreadful things. But when it came to galvanizing and committing to a group of people around something that you do want, it was much more difficult to get people together. So that started this question for me, how do you actually do that and do it well and reach what you want or what you communally want? So yeah, that, and along the way, the last 16, 17 years, there have been, as I said, I've been working with slum upgrading, informal settlement upgrading, community development type projects where you try to get as many people together as possible and in a sort of focus area within a village area, as you might want to call it, what are we going to do about our situation? We want to improve it. How do we do that? And there are these, I guess, in the literature, and it's been studied, these key elements which have come out in Mark's Manifesto, definitely. Some of the other things, the little tricks or lessons that I've learned along the way, I thought I might be able to add to that here and there. Certainly the idea of what's in it for me seems to be a key element. If I want to, if say my neighbours or my community want to work together on a project, I want to know what's in it for me. Basically, if I come to a meeting, I pretty much want to know what am I going to get out of it, even if it's something to eat at that meeting, as small as that. I want quick results. I want to see and know what's happening. I want to feel like I'm contributing, but maybe not so, not that I'm controlling or governing the way things are happening. I want someone else to do that. And that's usually where this host idea comes in. If there's a structure already there, what's on the ground is sort of, maybe there's a leader, a local leader. There's this feeling that I don't have to contribute too much. It's a quick and easy type of engagement that often works quite effectively. I think the flexibility and the inclusiveness of the project has to be quite evident. That, any ideas, all ideas are welcome. You don't have to fear about bringing new ideas into some sort of common goal. But I don't actually want to go on to too much about all of that, but I think the key thing is that it is easy to be involved and easy to contribute. And it has to be completely accessible for me to be involved in before I make any huge commitment. And I find often the stumbling blocks, the hurdles have been this idea of, okay, if I go to this meeting, then I have to somehow commit myself to the whole project and be involved with people who I don't know and I don't trust. And there's this sort of hurdle that we often find has to be overcome. So this whole idea about community trust, or there's trust and there's a relationship building type exercises that have gone into the organization or the project, and that's but you don't have to engage fully until you understand and that you feel a part of it and that you feel welcomed and you don't have any fear about your contribution. And I was also thinking about what this idea of, and I think that those little parts fit into the bigger manifesto that Mark has discussed already. But when I think about this idea of the COVID, what happened during COVID for me in my community here in my neighborhood, the main what was important about living in this village area, or what were the things that I valued or my family valued, and it was definitely this idea of reliability of neighbors, that I could easily ask my neighbors, can you look after my children for a while I have a Zoom call, or there were places that I could send my kids to the park or whatever. This feeling, this atmosphere of safety and trust. And I think that's essential with any sort of work that you do at this level. So, I mean, I'm trying to bring down to a focus without too much structure all of the different things that are involved in working at a community level, or a very small community level, micro level, village level. Yeah, but I think that across the world, it's going to be different. But at the same time, there are key elements. And I think the manifesto captures those elements. But just to add to that, this idea that things need to be quick and easy, visible, trust, and this atmosphere of no fear is part of it. Yeah, so that's in a very small nutshell.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. That's terrific. And I think quick and easy and visible it sounds like a really good starting point. Wendy sent me a thing about participative cities the other day, which had that pretty close to the top. If it's visible, then people can start responding to it. Whereas people sitting in rooms filling in grant applications isn't very visible, and it's not very fun either. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, folks, let's get you involved a bit more. I am putting into the chat a question. What would be the benefits of living in an active village in the city, do you think? And there's a link to menti.com and a number code. So I would like everyone to think about the answers to this question, the benefits of living in an active village in the city. Click on the link, use the number code, and then you can put in up to 5 different answers, benefits that you think you might get from living in an active village in the city. And maybe you're organising it, maybe you're participating in it, whatever. But if you just have a think and then click on that link, and we'll see what everybody is thinking about. So away we go. And as the answers start to come in, I will begin to get them onto the screen here. So hopefully you can now see the results starting to come in. Interesting that trust is already proving to be quite a big thing there, and all these other things around it. Trust, friendship, belonging, all good, all very powerful things. And just while everyone's doing that, that's fantastic. These answers are coming in. Friendship, connection, resilience coming in there as well. All these things coming in. Just to draw your attention to just above where we are in the chat now, Lara shared a huge list of different resources and websites that she's been tapping into in Willow Bray in Edinburgh. And I didn't know you could be a transition street, for example. That's of course connected, I suppose, with the transition towns movement, but transition streets is even more local. That's great, and all sorts of other things that she's put there. So do have a look at that as you have a minute. So the word clouds, the things that are leaping out at me from here, and I hope everyone can see it. trust, belonging, friendship, connection, resilience, creativity, and all these other terrific things. Thank you. So, if you're still doing that, keep doing it, and I will be sharing this with everybody at the end of the call, along with a link to the recording and all the chat, the resources that are all cropping up as well. So, while that's just coming in, we're going to go into small groups in just a moment. Does anyone have a burning question that they kind of feel must be answered right now about this concept? There's a chance to ask it right now before we go into groups. So, burning questions? Anybody?
Mark, it's John. Just one really quick question of Wendy. Can you say a few words about the demographic of Cheltenham Connect when you first started up? Age demographic?
Yeah, I think average age, I've sent it to some of them, so average age 40, median age lower than 38. So we've got quite a lot of schools in Cheltenham, so it brings average age down.
Okay. And a fairly good spread. Yeah.
Fairly good spread, very Middle England, not a hugely ethnic representative
Okay.
kind of gloom, but yeah. And Mark,
Yes.
Mark, I just wanted to say, in response to Adrian, that we didn't have a lot of, when people came to meetings, they really wanted to be in the room. So we didn't have a lot of people feeling fearful about coming to meetings. And I think that's the huge difference between having someone who's a representative of an organization or the council or an elected representative organizing anything, and having the community themselves put forward people that other people already knew. So they really wanted to come to the meetings. We never had that sense of discomfort. But I think, and that's the skill of those hosts, being the right people, and a number of them for different parts of the community.
Yes, right. That is just amazing. That's one of the things. Good hosting can make a real difference in this.
Huge
the way
difference.
You bring people together makes a big difference. It doesn't cost money. It just costs a bit of skill
Trust.
and a bit of time.
Yeah, because it's all about trust. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go into some small groups. What I suggest, say hi to the people. I have no idea who you're going to be with, so it's a wonderful mixing opportunity. A couple of questions for you to talk about. What excites you about the village and the city concept? And what might be some good next steps? I put those in the chat. Of course, those of you who are Zoom veterans will realise that you won't be able to see that once you go into your rooms. So you might want to just jot that down or make a little note about those two questions. And I have also set up a Google document, which is now in the chat, which has those questions in it. And I'd encourage you, as you have a chat in your groups, to write in the Google document, which is shared between all of us. So, and you don't have to have a scribe or anything. Just somebody type some things if you feel so moved. And I'd love to see what you're coming up with about what's exciting about this, what might be some good next steps. So there we are, and we're going to go into our groups, and the groups will last for about 8 minutes, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning. So there's the link, there's the questions. You'll get a thing now to open your rooms, and please join in with your colleagues. And I'll see you in 8 minutes or so. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, Lisa and Afami, if you want to click on the link to join your group, then please do that. Thank you. So, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Good to see you rejoining the main conversation here. And I think everyone is coming back. Yes, there we go. So, thank you very much all for that. I've been watching the Google document developing as we go along. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, I didn't get to the Google document.
Never mind, never mind. It's still there in the chat and it's still open. So if you would like to go and add things now or at the end of the call even, there's an opportunity to do that. So I'm just aware that we've got 8 minutes left and there's a brief opportunity here. There were 2 questions. What excites you and what might be some good next steps? Let's take a couple of shout outs on what excites you. People would like to share? Just unmute yourself and shout.
Okay, well, if everyone's been shy, I'll say something. It's the fact that we've had such a tremendous response during the lockdown that to try and encourage those people that have been volunteering and the sense of community spirit to be harnessed in other ways for the benefit of everybody in the town.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Good thought. Something else? Yes, Wendy. Unmute yourself.
What excites me is the scalability. I think we've never had the opportunity to scale, and part of the conversation our group was that how quickly you can scale up great ideas now, and so that other people don't have to duplicate all the time and resources. You can fast track it. So I'm very excited about how quickly this kind of thing could grow.
Yes, me too. So the other question was what might be some good next steps, and there's less in the Google document on that, but I'm intrigued to know what people think about that. Because here this thing in my mind, this is it's been around for a long time, but my version of it's 3 weeks old. This is the first time we've got together to talk about it. What might happen next? What do you think?
I'll just jump in quickly with one of the things that I find easy to set up and quick, and we've talked about that once before, is there are 2 things actually. A survey, even in a couple of streets, face to face, if you're interested to get a feeling for your own neighborhood, own village, doing a face to face survey that takes absolutely no time, but just gets right down to the core questions. What's wanted, what do you value about your neighborhood? What about the idea of having a street party or a village party, something like that? Just getting people together for the first time to establish, like you said, bringing back away from the virtual reality to the actual reality, local reality. That excites me, and it's also, I think, it's a good next step.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Those are good next steps for in a village. How about good next steps for the project?
I was thinking about like the event that I do organize in Bolivia based on language exchange, meeting and traveling. When you have like a community that works in a local geographically place, if it works as a universal language, you can replicate while traveling in another place. So next step would be moving languages. It would be like nomadic village. Like I was living in Bolivia, and I did experience when I was in Colombia, I had the same need that I had when I create that community. And I say, okay, I'm in Colombia, I'm in the same situation when I was in Bolivia, do it again. Post on Facebook the event, communicate the meanings of the meeting and gathering people, foreign people, local people, artists, and having language exchange meeting. And I was in Indonesia and I was in a hostel. And I say, hi guys, I have this project in Bolivia. Why don't you like a Parlana language exchange meeting tonight? I mean, it was not sustainable, but was like steal the brand up. And I say, okay, so the village can move around the world. So it like broke the boundaries of villages and nomadic villages. That would be the next step, probably.
Wow, that's great, Jody. Thank you very much. Amazing idea.
I think it would be great if we could gather all the different ideas and have somewhere where we could look at things so that we could get ideas from other people, build on ideas from other people, and see what might work.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's very good, Tricia, because this isn't the sort of thing where there's things that work or don't. There's going to be things that work in certain places, and the more choices we have around those, the more things we can kind of think imaginatively about deploying, maybe. Yes, so we've just got a few moments left, folks. So I have made a little bit of a start on some of these things. There is already a Facebook group. That's a very small start, but it is the kind of thing that does offer an opportunity to connect. And I've just put that into the chat. There is also a worksheet which I created based on the 7 aspects of the village in the city, and that is there on an upload there as well. I will share the recording and the chat and everything else with everyone on this list. If you would like to offer some help to the movement, if you like, as opposed to in your own village, I would love to hear from you, because help with anything at all, whether that's websites or moderating forums or running Twitter or gathering resources or graphic design or whatever, I would welcome any offers of support. And there is a place at the bottom of the Google document for those who would like to write in. If you're keen to help me with this thing, what's your name, what's your email address, what kind of things would you like to help with, please write there as well. And I'm going to leave that document open for a while after we finish the call. Lara says recommending doing something initially is a good way to connect with neighbours. Big street, a street party, big lunch, picnic, or something. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, Joan works for people who can't afford the internet and don't see Facebook. I'm sorry about that, but we have to start somewhere, and perhaps in your own community you'll find a way to connect with them. We have to begin somewhere, I'm afraid. The next step will be maybe in other things that reach out in other ways. So, chance for, just as we come towards the end of our very, very interesting hour together, chance for any final thoughts. Oh, one more thing before I do that, I'll put a link in here. I'm doing a session next Monday called a Virtual Cuppa, organised by an organisation called Mutual Gain. But on this topic, there's a link there. It's a free call, an hour on Zoom. So if you want to join me for that, please do. There's the link. Just a chance for a closing thought or two from anyone who would like to offer one for today.
I'd like to thank you, Mark, for bringing together this great group. As usual, the 8 minutes just flew past in the breakout room. So I hope we can stay connected. And that's one of the things I love about technology, bringing global ideas into kind of village reach. And that's what the decolonial thing is about that I put into the chat. Excellent. So hope to cross paths with many of you again.
Yeah, thanks, Irene. Lovely to see you. Thought from somebody else? Wendy?
I'm just say I'm really happy to help strategy-wise as we go ahead, and I'm linked in to a lot of stuff that's going on globally, so I'd love to help. So I'll bring it to you, Mark, to share with the group, because there's so much going on that's really interesting.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I've been scratching the surface of it in the last couple of weeks, and there is, as you say, an amazing amount of stuff. Not all of it fits my desire of very big and very small touching. So I want to keep going with that. Well, look, everyone, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm quite happy to sit around here and have a chat with anyone who wants to, so I'm not going to sort of end the call immediately right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute everyone, and we can all say thank you very much and wave goodbye and whatever else, and if anyone wants to hang around and talk to me afterwards, please feel free to do that. So thank you all. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
I'm going to stay on for a minute, Mark, if that's okay, just to quickly connect.
Stay on.
Of course. I'm just saving.
Me too.
I'm going to stop the recording as well. So.